When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ludlow, and enjoy today's episode. Hello, folks. Mark Ludlow here with the Fearless Mindset Podcast. And today we are figuring out I'm learning how to not use Riverside FM and using Zoom. And it's been a fun morning for Rick and I trying to navigate, troubleshoot all these technical things. I need to hire my high school nephew or niece to figure this all out. But anyway, we have an amazing guest. Rick just been busy. He's been all over LinkedIn, and has quite the background. Air Force paratrooper and author of the book called Black Ops: The Life of a CIA Shadow Warrior. I love that title of that book, Rick. It probably tells a story that probably equates to Jason Bourne, if not worse.
Well, at least it's real, not Jason Bourne.
Real, exactly. But so you have that book you came out with, and you've done some pretty wild things and working with the government, I'm sure, government agencies and stuff. And what would you like the audience to know about the book you just came out with?
Well, I think the reason why I wrote the book is what will describe it best. I got very tired of watching TV and movies and reading all the negative stuff that is constantly thrown against my agency, especially the immorality of it, the illegalness of it, which at least in my 25 years, I cannot speak from 1960s, I was in Cuba, but at least during my 25 years there, I never saw that. But the real tipping point for me was when I last looked at the wall, and we have 139 stars, Mark, and almost a third of those are post 9/11. Many of them I knew, some I sent in harm's way. So to me, it was a way of honoring my colleagues, honoring my agency by providing an audience a real operational look into what CIA does, the amount of oversight we have. And like you know from the book, I mean, there's plenty of sexy missions in operation, and the big difference is they're real.
Yeah, I see so many times where Hollywood creates a depiction of what the agency is not. And it's just like you said, it demoralizes it. And, I often tell people, ask me, what I think of, the presidency, the office of the president. I'm like, well, I respect it. And there's many of us agency guys like yourself, you served in the Air Force, Marine Corps myself. I was willing to, I gave an oath of the Marine Corps to serve my country against foreign and domestic enemies. And it didn't matter who was in office. And I often tell people the CIA is probably the most powerful agency in the world, more powerful than the presidency itself, because the CIA continues, regardless of who the president is, to make sure our American interests are maintained against espionage, against foreign adversary threats, cyber stuff. And there's things that, as a CIA operative, which you are, you can't tell that because that's all beyond classified information. But it's what you guys do so well, protecting our country globally.
Well, thank you. That's very good to hear. I will tell you that one of the things that the agency enjoys is great oversight. And I'm not being sarcastic. The fact that I know, I was there with George Bush when he signed the 17 September lethal finding after 9/11.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was there in our headquarters. I was the chief of operations of the counter-terrorist at the center at the time. And Covert Black was my boss. Hank Crumpton was there with me, and Ben Bonk, who was the main deputy. The same thing at the end of my career when I went back on the street for 2 years and try to do my stuff, I literally briefed, Vice President Cheney and Condoleezza Rice on what I was working on, and he blessed it. So my point is, yes, we do have a lot of power, but it comes under our Title 50 authorities that are provided only by the President of the United States, whomever he or she may be. So,
because ultimately the president is your boss.
that is correct. I mean, nobody manages our day-to-day business. Obviously, we have a director for that. I think that that's one of the things that we could do better at is raise homegrown agency officers like Cofer Black, like Jose Rodriguez, who have the credentials, who have the brains, who have the politics, who can be apolitical no matter who puts them in power. And this does two things. First of all, you are representing the agency, number one. Number two, the people in the agency look up to you because you're legitimate. If you have not sat in a car in a dark alley with some scumbag like I have done a million times, how can you sympathize or empathize with my profession? Yet you're leading us and making these high-level decisions. So that's something I'm hoping that turns back around.
What is the being that we're in? I don't want to get political because in the agency, in the military, we weren't political. We just did our mission, right?
That's correct.
And like when I was in the Marine Corps, Bill Pullman was involved, and he was our president. If he gave the order to go in a war zone, guess what? I had to go to a war zone. If I got shot and killed, that's the oath I took. And I see a lot of disfranchising going on in our country about being left, being right. It's about the preservation of our Constitution, of our freedom, of our liberty. And I think we lost our thought of what America stands for because of this woke culture going around. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I honestly think that this is something that we're not only self-destructing with this divisiveness, but obviously it is what other governments do to each other. This is what the Russians are very good about doing, and the Chinese, and fomenting these kind of problems and funding these kind of problems. That's the dirty side of the intelligence game. But I totally agree with you. In the agency, at least while I was there, we were not allowed to have political stickers on our car.
Oh, wow.
Because if you worked for me or I worked for you and you had a Reagan, Obama, whatever it is, sticker on your window, that prohibits me from, thinking for myself, kind of thing. So down to that granularity is something that I applaud. And unfortunately, the military, from, like I said, like you said, I did 8 years total with Air Force Pararescue, some active, some reserve. And you're right, we swore an alliance to this country. And I don't care who's in power.
And I think that's our secret weapon as big patriots. We don't get swayed by the left or the right narrative, what's being pumped in the media. Like you just said it, whatever the narrative that China or Russia is trying to steal in our media, with social media being involved now. Oh, yeah. I think we as military, retired veterans like yourself, we think differently. I'm like, I'm noticing everybody's getting caught in conspiracy theories. And that seems to blow up, like social media. And next thing you know, people call me, hey, did you see what you saw on Facebook? I'm like, okay, let me ask you one thing. Where'd you see the source? Oh, it's Facebook. Yeah. I said, me and my veteran buddies and the veteran community, we really don't get caught up in this platform, because we usually have ears to people that have boots on the ground somewhere. They can give you reliable information.
Absolutely. I don't rely on social media other than promoting my book. So hey. To tell you the truth, look, I joined Facebook and LinkedIn when I got the contract for the book because they asked me to. I had never been on social media before. I am now.
I gotta ask, does it bring more drama in your life or peace?
Well, it doesn't bring peace. I think one of the upsides is I have been able to reconnect with some old friends, and that's always pretty cool.
Yeah.
I've also made some new friends in like-minded individuals, like with your background and mine, that secret handshake that we all share.
Right.
But there's so much BS in all of them. I mean, Instagram, and Twitter, forget it. I mean, I have like 3,000 people following Twitter, and they're all Chinese or Japanese or some other crap. So, yeah, it's scary.
Oh, that's funny. Oh my God, we're having a Joe Rogan experience here. But that's good. That's good. Well, that's funny how you mentioned that. I got a bunch of, foreign nationals following my Twitter account. I don't know who they are. Are they bots? Who knows?
Yep.
But it's the power of social media and the people advising you on your contract with your book. They know how powerful those platforms are. Unfortunately, they have a lot of influence in today's society.
Yes, and obviously I benefited from it. The book made #8 on the New York's bestseller list, New York Times bestseller list. It's been on Amazon editors' #1 choice for history and bios. But a lot of that comes from working it. So I have been working the social media, but strictly in not in a political platform. I don't do politics.
Smart man. Words of wisdom, folks. Keep your peace in your mind. I mean, so now you're an author. You're getting asked to do all these interviews, and thanks you for coming on the show. I'm not. We don't have 1 million downloads down yet, like Mr. Rogan himself over there in Texas. But we. What is your advice to the veterans or the people actively serving our country right now? I hear morale is pretty low right now. What is your advice to those folks that might be listening, former law enforcement, and they got defunded and lost their jobs or whatever? What is your advice to those patriots out there in the current culture of our country?
Well, first and foremost, if you don't like the government, you vote. And I think that is one of the things that a lot of people, that middle mass of America, that's neither far left or not, far right, we have to wake them up. But I mean, for me, I'm an optimist. As you know, again from the book, I was born in Cuba. I came to this country at the age of 10 by myself. Went to an orphanage, Catholic orphanage. I have a huge debt of honor to this country for taking me and my family in and allowing us to create and enjoy the American dream. But I did that through service. I did that through hard work. Other people do it as doctors, lawyers, and Indian chiefs. But keeping in mind what is really the ethos of the United States, because it's not the far left and it's not the far right either. That's where we belong as a nation. And if politicians were a little smarter, that would be where they would like to should be hooking into. That middle America, the people that give, conservative Democrats or whatever you want to call it. I think that's what keeps me sane. I know in the real point here, though, Mark, is that one of the reasons that I stayed working with the U.S. Special Military for probably the last 14, 15 years, besides Blackwater, is because it rejuvenates me. When I go to Fort Bragg, I was there, I taught at the ASOT for 7 years there, and all those guys, I mean, even though they were half my age, they were my heroes. The family structure, their religious commitments, their commitment to this country. Guys who have 6, 7 tours, who you could see them walking the halls with a limp because they've been shot, and they come in like a kid in the candy store and says, "I'm deploying tomorrow." So that for me was so refreshing, and that's something that the average American needs to understand, even if not participate, but support. Beyond the thank you for your service stuff, which has become pretty rote.
Yeah, you said, when you were talking there, you gave me a flashback of why I started my company, Level Security Group. And people ask me, what is my why? And I think I discovered it in the last 2 months. Having people on LinkedIn that are veterans say, "Hey, thanks for the work." And it's not about making $1 million. It's about how many veterans I can support and put food on their table.
Yeah.
And make that impact to our law enforcement community, into our veteran community and give them a sense of purpose again once they leave the military. Because there's, I went through it when I left the Marine Corps. Like, this is the corporate America, really? How do they get anything done?
Yeah.
And so that was my purpose and my why. And then I started, this all during the pandemic. So I'm starting the podcast. I'm like, okay, what's going to be my message? Inspiration and hope to those veterans that are looking for purpose again once they leave the military.
See, that's the real thank you to the military folks. Helping them.
Sponsors, taking for them. That way I can allow free speech. Which you get sponsorship on the podcast. You kind of see a little bit of what message you get out from your show. I obviously, you know what? I want this to be an open dialogue, open discussion. Reasons.
Hey, Mark, you're breaking up on me.
That's
Yeah, it's breaking up.
it is. Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't understand more than half of what you said. All of a sudden, you just started garbling.
Hey, podcast team, listen to this out. It's here. Okay. Which is weird. Rick?
Yeah, I can barely hear you. And it sounds, when I do hear you, it's like if you were underwater. Can you hear me clear?
Clear. Crystal clear. Okay. Test.
Loud and clear.
Now I can't. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, I don't know what happened. Maybe it's meant to be.
Adapt and improvise.
Yep, exactly. That's what we learned in the military. Okay, podcast team, we're ready to roll again. Not sure what happened there with that sound problem. But where were you, Rick? I lost track with all the technical glitches on the show.
Well, we had talked about what we were trying to do for the military, what you did with your company. As I think I joined Blackwater. I was the first CIA operations officer to join Blackwater. And I think my title at the company says it all. I was vice president for special government programs. Wow. In other words, I was doing exactly what I did inside my building, but now for the community. And, there's a lot of bad press out there on Erik Prince, and I haven't talked to him in probably 10 years, or at least 6 or 8. But at the time that I knew him, the time that I was working with Blackwater, I was in awe of the patriotism that permeated every corner of that organization. And a lot of that had to do with Erik. All the super duper programs that I was running, which, were very successful with both the DOD and the agency. It was never a contractual thing for Erik. It was reimbursed for expenses. He never made a dime off of those. Why? Because he was making so much money off of everything else that's why he hired me. And he told me that when he hired me, he says, I started training at Blackwater when I started my last team, which is the latter part of the book. And nobody ever asked, and I never said. But when he asked me to join Blackwater, and I asked him what my job was, he says, look, I don't know what you were doing, but I like how you were training. So whatever it is, I just want to resuscitate that and help the U.S. government. And that's what we did. I did that for a good 8 years.
Wow. What a story. So he didn't make any money on the contract part of it?
No, those, I mean, you're talking pennies compared to what, the WPPS is something which I was one of the guys who helped them secure the bid because I was one of 3 presenters. But with those programs and especially the air side of the house, which they were doing stuff for the Saudis and the Jordanians and everybody else, all our other allies. They were making very good money. They were paying very good money. We had military guys from all branches of services standing in long lines trying to get into Blackwater because they knew that A, he was mission oriented, B, they had leadership, and the remuneration was good. It was, you know, what it should be for guys that are going in harm's way like that.
Right. Wow. That must have been an amazing experience. Just in the inner workings with Erik. I mean, the guy's a very brilliant business mind. The stuff he's done.
Without a doubt, he's got the business genius. As you know, his father was a self-made billionaire in the auto industry, parts and stuff, and you know, a SEAL, an accomplished pilot, multi-engine, and all that other stuff. And one of the things that I try to tell people when I talk about Erik is that when I met him, I was chief of ops at the Counter-Terrorist Center. He was providing security. His company, first time I ever heard of Blackwater, was providing security at the Ariana for us in Kabul. Erik deployed with that first team.
Wow.
Notice that I said deployed with. He was not the team leader.
He just deployed.
He just deployed because he was he went through SEAL team training, did a little bit of SEAL time, but then when his father passed away and his wife contracted cancer, he had to pull out. So my point is, here you have a guy who's the president of the company, even though it was fairly small back then compared to what it grew, and he's willing to go in harm's way as a nug without egos of saying, hey, well, wait a minute, you can't do that because I'm the boss. No, you're the one that knows what's going on and we will follow you.
Wow. I did read part of his book about learning about his wife passing away with cancer and all that. He's been through more than most average person out there. I mean,
I was at her funeral. So yes, I remember how hard that hit him.
Man, plus running a company, and then plus being accused by your politicians of being a traitor and all that. I'm like, really? This guy's an American war hero. I mean, the stuff he did, and if it wasn't for Blackwater, what you guys did in the first wave in Iraq, we wouldn't have had the success we had over there.
And I totally agree. You know, I work very closely with the diplomatic security guys all my career, so I have a lot of friends there. Yeah. And they were all very grateful because they said, you guys have actually saved American lives. Mm-hmm. But you know, it goes even beyond that, Mark. There's two incidents that Blackwater was involved in. One, there was a Polish ambassador to Iraq. He was driving around with his PSD, not a Blackwater PSD, and they got hit hard. Took an enormous amount of casualties. He himself was wounded or burnt or something like that. You know, they hit their tracker, and there was a Blackwater unit not too far from there. They responded. They took care of the bad guys and saved the ambassador and everybody else. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't a contractual thing. It was actually, they were taking a risk doing something that they would get no remuneration for. The second one was the security of a building in Iraq. And it was a special government building. And we had our contractor, some Navy SEAL time guys there, but there were also Marines, active duty Marines. And the place was overwhelmed with like 350 bad guys trying to shoot it, at it. And they're asking for resupply because they were running out of ammo. One of the Marines took a round. He had a sucking chest wound. Air Force tried to come in. They got lit up. They had to leave. The Army came in. Same thing. They got lit up. They had to leave. One little bird, Hughes 500, with a pilot and a crew guy show up. The pilot puts the skid of the helicopter on the parapet. They throw out 2 boxes of ammo, grab the Marine, put him. This is all under fire. Brought the Marine in and saved his life and saved us the building. It allowed us to fight and keep that building. So again, it goes to point of what you were talking earlier. These men are what they are because they're all former elite military individuals.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Very elite in their mentality too.
Of course. Well, their commitment. Yeah.
It's an attitude. I mean, you're trained in counterterrorism, right? That's kind of your background. Here's a question that strikes me with the open Mexican border right now. I wonder, of the hundreds of thousands are flowing through there a month, if not more, are we running the risk of having terrorist cells crossing that border well, and in a matter of time they start popping things? What's your thoughts on that?
Let me turn the tables on it. Can you imagine if the Russians or the Chinese were having this border problem? You don't think the United States would be fomenting guys to go in there and spy and do whatever it takes? Of course you're coming through. Of course you're coming through. And the opposite side of the pendulum, you have this Afghani interpreter who fought with our special operations guys for years. He comes in through the border, he's in jail, and he's being deported. So there's a lot of irony there. I am an immigrant. I'm all for American immigration.
Sure.
But I'm a legal immigrant. And I think that's the key word. We need to control our borders, no different than protecting your own house. If a neighbor of yours breaks into your back room with his wife and she has a baby in your room, you don't have to pay for that kid's college. And that's what we do with the borders. We need to be able to allow immigration in. We need to fix the program, but it has to be people that we know and that we can identify and that we can track, not just every individual that decides to come north. And they have been. They've captured guys from the Middle East. They've captured guys from all kinds of terrorist groups in Latin America.
I mean, what is your theory forecast on the risk of America now that border's been wide open for the last year and a half now, 2 years?
Yeah, we are definitely in a lot worse shape than we were a few years back. It's just even just the minor odds. If you figure, even if 1% is either criminal, terrorist, or a political influence type intel individual, and you have hundreds of thousands of people coming through a day, not a day, but whatever, 1% of that is still a very lethal kink in our armor.
So that's probably our weakest spot, along with misinformation, is that border. And the misinformation campaigns that Iran, China, and Russia, throw at us each election cycle. We see that all the time. More so social media.
They're very two different but successful threats. The psyops part of their mission is to demoralize the Americans, to highlight all the negative stuff. Goes back to Hollywood and the movies that have to do with my agency. Conspiracy theories sell. The truth doesn't.
The truth doesn't. Oh, that's a great point. That's very profound. And for the audience listening, this is a Mark Ledlow Fearless Mindset podcast. As you guys know, we got Rick Prado, the author of the book called Black Ops and the Life of a CIA Shadow Warrior. You can find Rick on LinkedIn, and you can find him on Facebook. I don't think you're anywhere else, are you? You said Twitter too?
I got Instagram and Twitter, but Instagram has been actually pretty easy to use, and it's been very fruitful.
So he's on Instagram as well. How do they find you on these platforms, Rick?
If they just Google Rick Prado, all that stuff comes up.
It comes up.
RICPRADO.
So the audience, please follow Rick on his platforms. And where can they find your book at, Rick?
Any major publisher, distributor, Amazon carries it. So does Barnes and Noble. People mail it, mail the order and it comes to their house.
Perfect. So get your copy, folks. Order it right now. Before I go any further, I'm going to give you a couple seconds to look it up and order before we carry on. But I want to make sure we get some books ordered for Rick while he's on the show. And also, we need you guys to go to Apple Podcast and rank what you think. Rick, give us a 5-star ranking on the show, so it helps the algorithms and a lot of jazz that goes on with podcast ranking. And I want to really highlight Rick's show today and his talk, because I want to feature Rick for what he's done for our country, for this and the CIA, and also being a CIA operative overseas and everything he's done. So this is a show about his story, and this is what we love about the Fearless Mindset. He's overcome a lot of fear to get to where he's gone. He had overcome probably insane amounts of fear in his life.